A studio can be set up anywhere. All you need to do is have the proper lighting equipment, have a backdrop. You know, you can do a board for your ground. If you're doing a portrait, then no, then you want the paper to go all the way down. And move around your lights, move around your subject, and you've got a great studio. It is ideal to have lots of space, but if you don't, you can work it out in small spaces. Now, the important thing is to work with the lights properly. This photograph was taken with just the model lights of the actual light. And so see how it gets all yellow? Well, what happened is the camera was set to let me see, what was it set? It was set up to using a flash. I didn't use a flash, I used the model lights, and of course the lights got all yellow. So the first thing you want to do is set up your white balance. Get your camera ready and your lights, and then remember that when you're doing photographs with a strobe, you're going to be controlling the light with the strobe. Set your aperture to the depth of field you want to work with. So if you want to work with a shallow depth of field, you're going to be shooting with f2, 4. If you want a very sharp depth of field, you'll be working with 11, 16. But you will control the lights through the strobes. The less light you have, the darker it is. On my strobe, I can have full strength, and then I can have half, a quarter, and I can have up to 1/32. Every strobe is different. Take a look at yours. Always do a test shot to see what your exposure looks like. And if you start seeing that part of your photograph is looking dark on one side, chances are your shutter is too quick. So on this photograph, I used the shutter of 1/250th of a second, or in some cameras it just has the number 250. So all I have to do is slow it down to 125 or even 60. It's going to depend on the camera. Now do another test shot and take a look at your work again. Notice that the background here is looking a little bit gray, and it was a white background, but the truth is I'm working only with one light. When you're working with one light, the background will tend to get a little bit dark. The only way to change that is if you light the background separately. So if I wanted a bright white background, I would light the background and then light the doll with a different light. Okay, but in this case, I'm only going to be working with one light, and I'm really not too worried about the color of the background. I'm going to be more worried about the light on the actual doll. So I'm going to start moving the light around and see how I can make this a little bit more dynamic and more interesting. As I move the lights around, I'm also moving the camera around. So I'm trying to see where the shadows are going, how to make that face a little bit more dynamic. And then I noticed that my image was too blue, so I went to the white balance of my camera, and on my camera I'm allowed to play around a little bit more with the white balance. I can actually go in there, and it has a feature that allows me to add more yellow, more red, or more green, which is really good. Some of you may not have that. You might have to do that in Photoshop in post-production later on. Here I moved around the lights, and I also lowered the camera so that I could make the doll look much larger than it is. By doing that, it's not looking as dramatic as I want it to look. I want it to have a little bit more mystery to it. And I'm enjoying the eyes. It's not catching any light at all. It looks lifeless, which is what I want to do. And as a tip here, I'm going to remind you, if you do that with a person, they're going to look not alive. So you may not want to do that with a person. But in this case, I'm going for the freaky look. I'm going for something a little bit lifeless in the face. But I still want more shadows. This is not quite what I want. I like the way that the top of the head has a nice, is very well lit and has a nice bit of a highlight over there, but I still have to work a little bit more. Okay, so this is getting a little bit darker, but I'm not getting what I want. Look at the white background, or the gold color background. It's still too bright, and actually what I want is the opposite. I want the doll to be brighter and the background to be darker. So what I have to do is move the light away from the background so that the background gets darker, and I'm also going to have to find a way of putting less light on the doll. Okay, so what I started doing was starting to cut down the light. I turned the light away from the from the background, but there was still a lot of spill. So what I did is I covered the umbrella with a nylon. So half of that light was covered, and there was still some spill going to the background. So I added a black board on either side, on each side, sorry, of the doll. And that way I minimized the amount of light going to the background. So what happened is that this started getting darker. See how the dress is also darker, but the face still has a nice kind of soft lighting on it. Now I am getting a gold hue here, and that's because remember, I told you at the beginning that I went to the back of my camera and I adjusted it to add a little bit more yellow because my photograph was too blue. But I'm going to leave this for now because I'm finding this interesting, and I want to work a little bit more on the quality of the light. On this photograph, I raised the nylon on the umbrella so that there's even less light reaching the dress. And I placed the boards closer to the doll so that there's less spill on the background. Notice how much darker it is, and this is still a white background and a white board, but look what I can do. Now I haven't changed the white balance because I'm not going to do that till the end. And I'm looking at the image and I'm thinking, you know, the face is almost there. I want to see if I can work on that just a little bit more. Okay, I've gone back to a different white balance. And I'm probably going to have to play around with that a little bit, but it's warmed up and it doesn't look so yellow and so gold. And notice the face, how now I have a nice reddish kind of pink cheeks. And look how much darker the dress got. I'm beginning to kind of find where I want it to be, or almost there. I still have a nice highlight on the hair so that it differentiates from the background, making it not making it look 3D and not flat. And the dress has enough nuances that I'm seeing, you know, all the different details still, but dark enough so that we have the total attention on the face. So I'm going to try one more thing, the last thing. I corrected the white balance a little bit more on my camera so that I could get that dark background, which is what I was really going for. If it needs a little bit more tweaking, which I think it does. Look at the face, it's a little bit red. Now the rest I'm going to do in Photoshop, but I think this was a pretty good exposure. I also changed the camera angle a little bit to add a tiny tilt to make it look like there's movement. I did lose some information on the veil. You can hardly see it around the face, or around her hair. In fact, here it looks like there was something done there, so I might still have to go back there and correct it, and maybe that's something I'm going to have to bring out in Photoshop, because the rest of the photograph is exactly how I want it. I want the dress to be toned down and I want the face to be highlighted. I did lose a little bit of highlight on the hair. Maybe I'll go back there and photograph another one. But what I wanted to show you is look at the difference from this one and the first photograph. It's a very big difference. This was one of the photographs that I talked about in the beginning, and when I said that I added a little bit of yellow. And look how the lighting is even, the background is very light. You know, it's an interesting photograph, but look at the difference. Look at this one. Look how much more dramatic this is. So this is what is so fantastic about working with strobes and studio lights, is that you can recreate anything. You can make things look much more interesting. You can add drama. You can make it more dynamic. You can make it look documentary. You can make it look mysterious. Lights are incredible. There is so much that you can do with this.